Good afternoon. In this video, I want to talk about false prophets and false teachers and why they are so rampant in America today and Britain. If you remember a false prophet called Kim, who prophesied that God told him that Donald Trump would win the general election. And in fact, I covered a video on this false prophet Kim, and I even played clips, of his speech. And I said it was so obvious that you knew the guy was lying. You have to watch that video, okay? I can't remember what his surname was, but it was Kim, okay? And I actually played a clip of the video, and I said, here is evidence that this guy was a fake prophet. He was a political prophet. In other words, he was pandering to people's political fantasy and desires and saying, oh, God told him this and God told him that. He was looking at the polls and the pretending, well, oh, Donald Trump looks like he's going to win. So straight away, oh, God told me. Okay? We are told in Jeremiah 14:14 that the Lord said to me, the prophets are prophesying lies in my name. I have not sent them or appointed them or spoken to them. These people are going around and saying, oh, God told me this, God told me that. These were false prophets. And the Bible continues, they are prophesying to you false visions, divinations, idolatries, and delusions of their own mind. Delusions, fantasies, this is what they want. But in these political times, what they're doing is telling people what they want to hear. Donald Trump's going to win, etc. And if you dare go against, their visions, oh, you're anti-Trump, you're anti-this, not realizing that you can see the inconsistencies of their delusions. This is how they whip you up like Nazi Germany. You're either for Adolf Hitler. If you're not, it's the same kind of mentality. However, what's interesting is that it goes on in Jeremiah 23:16. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Do not listen to what the prophets are prophesying to you. They are filling you with false hopes. False hopes. What did he mean by that? Jeremiah 23:16, false hopes. A lot of these false prophets today, what they're now saying, oh, God told me that your door of abundance is going to open. God's telling me this. And if you notice, it's always positive. Remember the pandemic COVID, when COVID first came on the scene? And all these prophets are going around it, like T.B. Joshua, Kenneth Copeland, blowing COVID. Said God's going to get rid of it, and COVID pandemic and it's gone worse than ever. These false prophets telling people what they want to hear. If you're telling people the truth, they will hate you for it. You got to tell them, talk to them like Joel Osteen. God's going to bless you. Even though the world is sexually immoral and depraved, but tell them, God's going to bless you. God's got something stored in the future for you. A nice bank account. And these people will follow you. In Israel times, God told Jeremiah that Jerusalem would be besieged. But all the false prophets are going, nah, don't listen to Jeremiah. You're safe, it's okay. Continue idolatry. Continue in your sexual immorality. Don't worry, you're safe. And God says, and Jeremiah, in fact, in one of the verses, he cried and says, Lord, Lord, you deceived me. Look at these people. They're happy. They listen to all these false prophets telling them, don't worry, good times ahead. Remember 1920s, the roaring 20s of prosperity with Betty Davis, the roaring 20s. We're in the money. People are happy. Forget about God. Forget about him. We're in the money, prosperity, and good times. And the genuine prophets, nobody wanted to know. In fact, Jesus said they killed the prophets, the genuine prophets. They killed the genuine prophets, and the fake prophets, they keep them alive. This brings me to this guy. What's his name? Troy Black. Okay? This guy, he claims God talks to him every single day. Every single day, God told him, to tell you to rest in the storm. To rest in the storm. That's wide. But wait for the shock. That's open to interpretation and annotation. These false prophets never go into specific. Or what does Troy Black does? He waits until the event, and then he tries to guesswork it. And they say, oh, God told me, I just had an end time dream. He scours other people's channel and he steals their ideas. This is how fake he is. Then he says, God told me about the coronavirus. God told me something about Christmas. God told me what's going to happen in June. God told me what's going to happen in May. God told me. I'm thinking, my gosh, God talks to him more than he does the Pope. God talks to him more than anybody else. Oh, God told me this, God told me that. Whenever someone says God tells you what shoes to wear, God told you what hat to wear, you know you can't trust that person. They're manipulating you by saying God says. Immediately your brain starts to fry. Your brain starts to suspend. When you listen to his video, it's abstract. He has nothing to say about Christian persecution done by the LGBTQ world. He has nothing to say about the trans agenda mocking Jesus Christ at gay pride. Yeah, he says God told him this. And yet the crucial things that are breaking the world apart, God is silent on. In other words, he's a poker player. He's a poker player. He's a gambler. Like Kim was when he says, Donald Trump was going to win the election. He was a gambler, a spiritual gambler. This is Troy Black. He's a gambler. Why? Because he waits for the event to happen and then he says, oh, let me guesswork. Let me guess. But you know something? He will never tell you any specific event that's going to happen before it does. These people are poker players. They're gamblers. They're fraudsters. They're con men. It's like, what's his name? TB Joshua. Coronavirus is going to disappear. In March 2020, it went worse. And in fact, TB Joshua ended up disappearing. Coronavirus still here, but TB Joshua ended up disappearing. Isn't that ironic? He's saying that coronavirus is going to disappear, yet TB Joshua ended up disappearing. Very interesting. But back to this guy. He's a con man. Look at his thumbnail. And he has something like, God told me about coronavirus. And he's like this. Lift the thumbnail. You think, what are you trying to do? If God tells you something, why are you putting a thumbnail and you're like this, like you're shocked? This is shock tactics. This guy, he's got a book on motivation. Stop worrying. He's like, Joel Austin. He has nothing to say but beautiful things. But he's a prophet. Calming the storm. And what God told me about Christmas, what God told me about coronavirus and depression. God didn't tell him nothing. I put my life on the line. This guy did not hear nothing from God. God spoke to him in January, in February, in March, in April, about Christmas, about Easter, what God told me. So God talks to him day and night, more than he does the Pope. When did this man become holy that God spoke to him? What is his background? What has he prophesied well before the event? What has he said? Nothing. He has nothing to say about the LGBTQ agenda. Nothing whatsoever. They're the biggest threat to the church, yet he has nothing to say about it. Yet they call themselves prophets. What he's doing, what's interesting, he's moving along the same line as Kim, that fake prophet, moving along the same line, right? He's using his platform for political message. He's finding out whose audiences are, and then he will say, oh, God told me that this person represents Israel, so this person is God's man. This is how they think. This is how they infiltrate the church. Because Christian people, they no longer have a relationship with God. They have a relationship with man. And when you start following man and not God, then your mind is open like putty. Kim ransacked the church with his false prophecy. He ransacked the church. In fact, a lot of people's false prophets were saying that Donald Trump was going to win, etc., blah, blah, blah. And I made videos, and I says, what happens if Donald Trump loses? And the abuse I got. And look who's right now. I said, what's going to happen to your faith if these false prophets turn out to be false and Donald Trump does not win? And you want to see the abuse I received from these manic people. Oh, he can't lose. He's God's man, etc. And in the end, Donald Trump lost. Whether it was through deceit or whatever, whether they come, they rigged the votes, whatever, he still lost. And a lot of Christians in a very bad state of mind mentally. Oh, he'll be back. Why? Their faith is on the line. This is what happens when you put false people and false prophets sitting in the center of the church. But they have a political agenda. This is what happens. I mean, Boris Johnson and Joe Biden went to Israel wearing the Jewish hat. Are they God's man? Is Joe Biden God's man? Is Boris Johnson anointed by God because he went to Israel? This is nothing more than a political stunt. This is nothing more than wanting Jewish money, Jewish support, Jewish bankers. It has nothing to do with God's prophecy. But this is what happens when your brain is doolally. They will hate you for it. They will slander you for it. This guy, Troy, coronavirus, what God told me about coronavirus, God didn't tell him nothing. And tomorrow night, when Easter comes, right, or bonfire night, whatever, what God told me. And this is how he captures his audience. This is how he deceives people. But he will never tell you anything before the event. He waits for the event. Oh, what God told me about it. Because you know why? He's a con man. He knows he has nothing to offer. He will not tell you anything before the event. He waits until the event happens. And then, oh, what God told me about this. What God told me about mince pies. What God told me about pork chops. The guy's a con man. In fact, I've left comments on his channel. I'm not sure whether he's going to remove them. But I said, there's something not quite right about you. I said, God speaks to you more than the Pope. He speaks to you more than anybody else every single day. It's like an astrology chart, January, February, March, and God's saying, oh, by the way, Troy, I want to tell you this about Christmas. Oh, by the way, Troy, I want to tell you about coronavirus. Now, he's a con man. But sadly, there are many people waiting to fit his shoes because people don't want to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Right? It's too much hard work. They don't want to find God for themselves. Which is why Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. All these false shepherds that's going around, fooling people, deceiving them. And Jesus says, I've come to give you life, but you won't follow me. If you follow me, you won't fall for people like that. Have a relationship with me, and your mind won't be putty in these people's hands. I lay down my life my sheep. My sheep hears my voice and they follow me. Not man, not anybody on YouTube. Follow me. But we don't want that. And that's the reason why the church is in a bad mess. We either follow the conference, we follow, our pastors, our deacons, what the conference teaches. We don't follow Jesus. We were baptized by the conference. We were baptized by Jesus Christ himself through the power of the Holy Spirit. But no, don't listen to God. Listen to the conference. And this is what happened. Look at the state the church is in today now. This is what happens when we want to follow man.